Hey everyone, I'm Lamar with MetaRank Interactive. This is the Healthcare Digital Marketing Podcast. I'm excited to have Eric as our guest today. He's going to give us a lot of insights on who he is and what he does in the dental community. And so, Eric, kind of just open up and let everyone know who you are and what you're about.
Hi all, my name's Erik Andrieux. I'm the founder of Andrieux Law PLLC, a New York-based law firm. I specialize in dental transactions, really, specifically dental transitions. So if you're buying or selling a dental practice, I'm your guy. I walk you through start to finish from, you know, choosing a buyer to closing. I don't stop until you either have money in hand or you're a business owner.
Man, that's awesome. And Eric, I know you and I've had, a few conversations where I think you're three. Can you kind of talk about your path to entrepreneurship, getting to where you are today, and kind of like how you feel about, running your own business?
Well, I'll start with that. I love it.
Okay.
So my path, I, like everybody else, went to school. That's how I was raised. Get a job, work till 65, and then retire. But,
Yep.
somewhere along the way, you realize there's a better way to do this. And so I've been in the legal field for a long time. I mean, I was a paralegal for 7 years. I went to night school, so I know about the grind. And then, I litigated for a while. That's, litigation's when you go to court. So basically
Yep.
what you see on TV. It just wasn't my speed. It's too slow. I always felt like, it takes 5, 7 years for one case just to find out maybe you lost at the end. I take issue with that. So, but
Yeah.
a friend of mine introduced me to the dental transition space, which is basically mergers and acquisitions, corporate law. And that's definitely more my speed. I mean, I studied business in college, so I was like, okay, this is the perfect marriage of business and law. And
Yeah.
I took to it like, a moth to a flame. I mean, I picked it up very fast and I enjoy it. I help these people transition into retirement or, helping the young kid associate, become a business owner, the American dream. And, they come to you like, they have no idea what's going on. And
Right.
I got you. Don't worry. Like I'm here to shoulder all that, the suffering and pain, so you don't have to deal with it,
Yep.
sit back and, I'll walk you through it every step by step.
Man, that's awesome. And I think that's huge for practice owners, right? Because like you said, they don't know what they don't know, right? And so like having an expert like you come in and help them with, the purchase of a practice or selling it is critical, right? So that they're not taken advantage of through that process, especially from a legal standpoint. What are some of the biggest, legal mistakes that you see dental practice owners make when it comes to buying or selling a practice?
Legal mistakes, I wouldn't say they're mistakes per se. That's why I'm here. But the things we want to look out for are liabilities after closing. You want to make sure that, obviously you're going to get stuck more than likely with your own liabilities, which is fair. It makes sense. Anything that happened before the closing, that should be your responsibility. But you don't want to get stuck with anything that the purchaser's fault. So you want to make sure the liabilities sections are robust. What else you got? The reps and warranties, those are important. Those are the representations and warranties are basically statements by buyer and seller. They make them to each other in the contract. Just about, so from the seller standpoint, statements about the business that the buyer's gonna, rely on in purchasing the practice. For example, if you're telling the buyer that you haven't had any lawsuits in the last
Mm,
5 years, and if that's
yeah.
not true, now that could come back and bite him later on, things of that nature. And then the purchaser has their own, representations, for example, that they've never been accused or investigated for any kind of Medicare or Medicaid fraud or any
Right.
insurance investigations. You want to make sure that's the case because then you can possibly, as a seller, get sued for negligently selling your practice to this person.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So there's a lot of due diligence that takes place. How long, I guess on average, does this process take based on all these different things that you just mentioned? Like how
Mhm.
long could an acquisition take?
I mean, we say typically 6 to 8 weeks, but that's like in a perfect world. That's
Okay.
where there's no arguments. The buyer and seller already agreed to everything. As lawyers, we're really just putting it in writing and adding our legalese to it to make sure everybody's covered. But Everybody reads it first time, they're like, we're good to go. But, realistically, you're looking at anywhere from 4 to 6 months because there's external sources. It's not just about the parties and their lawyers. There's the landlord, because when you're buying a practice, more often than not, you're taking over the seller's lease. The landlord is a disinterested third party. He couldn't care less if these people buy and sell their practice. Like either I'm gonna get the terms that I want and I have a new tenant who's gonna pay me rent, or I don't, and you're gonna stay here and pay me rent. So
Right.
that always delays things a little longer. And then, of course, the bank, banks are banks. They have 1,000 pages of papers they need to go through and algorithms to go through. So they're going to need all these financials. And let's say
Right.
they ask you for their financials on August 1st and you don't get it to them till September 1st. Now they're going to want the same thing for August. And we have to keep going back and forth and back and forth.
Wow.
So
Wow. It's like a pendulum swing.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd say realistically 4 to 6 months.
Okay. Okay. And then, so you mentioned a lot of things where it's like, hey, you really gotta, like make sure there's no, legal issues happening. But is there anything you would say with clauses that you just to scrutinize in a transition? Like, are there any things you're like, hey, one, two, three, four, five, whatever that is, that you really have to scrutinize when you're looking at a transition?
Yeah, I mean, so I typically apart from the liabilities, assumption of liabilities or lack thereof, and the representations and warranties, there's things like work in progress, redo work, accounts receivable. Those are things that are obviously very important to both parties that you want to make sure the terms make sense to you. So, if you want me to walk through those like briefly.
Yeah, yeah, it's all you, man. We just kind of want to, audience just wants to learn from your expertise.
Okay, so work in progress is exactly what it sounds like. That's work that the seller started and it's in progress when you close. So now, obviously, after you close, it's the purchaser's job to finish it. Maybe not
Okay.
personally, but it's his company now. So they're the ones finishing the work. So now,
Okay.
let's say I'm mid-treatment but we don't get paid till afterwards.
Okay.
How do we apportion that? So we have formulas for that. So, something like a third, a third, a third, or 50-50, or 25, 25, 25, 25, whatever it is. And then when the check comes in, but then there's also checks that were paid beforehand. So you pretty much have to combine that, and everybody, it's like, okay, this is what you're owed, this is what I'm owed, and then checks get shared until everybody gets paid what they're paid. But then
Okay.
there's carve outs for it. So I often like to give the seller at least 30 days after closing to kind of like just hustle and finish everything. And then he keeps everything that was paid. That just makes it cleaner, but they might fight back and they want to, because doing that whole reconciliation can get messy, especially for people
Right.
who, aren't very good at math or whatever it is, or you don't have an internal bookkeeper.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Uh, Accounts receivable, obviously, that's very important because sometimes these dentists have tens to hundreds of thousands of receivables still open after closing, whether it's from insurance companies, private patients,
Mhm.
whatever it is. So we have to make sure you get that money, but how do you collect when you're no longer the owner, So
Right.
I
Right.
try to put in provisions where the purchaser will collect on their behalf for at least 6 months. I prefer 12, obviously, and then after that, you're on your own. But hope the goal is that they can collect within a year. Pretty much, if you haven't collected your ARs within a year, you're probably never going to anyway.
Yeah.
So, they're
Yeah.
going to go to collections anyway and let them do their job. But so things of that nature, and then obviously then the purchaser is going to want to get paid for that. So there's, standard is like they'll keep 5% of what they collect. I obviously try to get rid of that if I'm representing the seller, but
Yeah.
that's another negotiation. And then redo work is also important because redo work exactly what it sounds like. Also, you did work on a patient it's like a warranty. Within the last 6 months, a year, one of your patients comes back for a retreatment. It's like, oh, my crown fell out, or, you messed this up. You got to redo it, and I'm not paying for this. It's like,
Mm.
okay, so now they're coming in after closing. The purchaser's not going to do that for free.
Right.
So either you have to come back from, wherever you are, you move to California, you move to Europe, either you come back and do it, or
Right.
the purchaser has no choice but to do it. But now you've got to pay him a portion of what you originally got paid. And then even that number is negotiated. So, is it going
Mm.
to be half? Is it going to be three-quarters of it, somewhere in the middle? Those are things that it's all, it's all about money at the end of the day. It's like who's paying who what. It's like, look, I'm selling my practice. This is
Right.
the price. I'm not trying to have to give, up that, some of those proceeds back to you.
Right. Right.
And vice versa. The purchaser's like, look, I'm already paying you this much. Like I'm not I'm not doing stuff that you're responsible for free.
Yeah.
So it's a compromise, but that's where the lawyers come into play. Because
Yeah.
either side, they're gonna want everything their way. It's
Yep.
never You're never
Both
gonna
sides.
close.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
we're never gonna close them.
Yeah, and what's crazy is like so we've like so as you know I handle marketing for dentists, right? And so we'll be in a conversation where we're talking to a dentist and they're buying a practice, right? And this we're in the initial phases of that conversation and we're talking about marketing pretty early. But then like mm, 2 months later, like we're following up and we're having, in-depth conversations. It's like, oh, we didn't close. We couldn't agree on whatever, right? And so I'm just like, man, so to your point, it's like this doctor wants one thing, this doctor wants another, and they just couldn't meet in the middle. And it's just like, man, because this one that I'm referring to got down that path a couple months and then
Mm.
they just decided to part ways. But I'm like, man, like it's a lot. Like to what you just explained, it's a lot of back and forth, because at the end of the day, it's can I sell this, and make profit, and can I come into this with profit? And I think,
Exactly.
it's a business, it's smart from a business standpoint on both sides,
Mm.
but it's got to make sense for both parties. Do you have any involvement with if the doctor stays on for, let's say, 6 months, 12 months, like after the completion of the sale, are you a part of like any like legal conversations or legal documentations if that doctor is going to stay on just to help the practice before he transitions out?
Absolutely, yes. So that's also part of the deal. It's they have different names for it, transition agreement, provider agreement, independent contractor agreement, or employee agreement. So yeah, it's a separate agreement like any other employment agreement. And it just has obviously the terms of what they're going to be doing, what they're going to be paid. But then, you know, the from a purchaser standpoint, you're going to also want to include, some provisions that make sure they transition the goodwill, which is really the what you're really buying. Like anybody could buy furniture and equipment and throwing it in a brand new space and start from scratch. But when you're buying a existing dental practice, you're buying the goodwill. That's the patient relationships, the referral relationships, the reputation of the dentist in the community, whatever brings people into their establishment, whatever brings them patients. So
Right,
from a purchase standpoint, you're going to want to have some provisions. It's tough because it's kind of arbitrary. Like, how do you transfer, an intangible like that, like the
yeah,
patient loyalty? Like they're loyal to me, I'm leaving. How am I
yeah,
supposed to make them loyal to you now? But you
right,
want to put something in there that says they'll at least use their best efforts or reasonable efforts to transition the loyalty of the patients and introduce you to the patients, introduce you to their referral sources,
right,
encourage both of those people to continue working with you after the closing, after I'm gone. It's like,
right,
well, this is my guy. I'm selling to him for a reason. Keep throwing him, referrals. Keep coming in. At least give him a chance. And if he's,
right,
then at that point it's on the purchaser. Like either you're a good dentist or you're not. Like
right,
if you're good,
right,
if you're good, they'll keep coming back. If you're not, that's, that nobody can help. But I've seen situations where there was no language like that, and then you end up in court because now
Mm,
you're losing all these patients and you're blaming the seller because he didn't do his part. But then
yep,
the seller's defense is like, well, it doesn't say what I have to do. Like I did what I thought was right. If it wasn't enough, that's not on me. So spell it
right.
out for me and I'll do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And speaking of like, I guess patience, right? Like, how do you protect patient records
Mm.
legally? Like when there's a transition, like, because even if the doctor stays on or doesn't, like, how does that happen to make sure? Because patients are like, what if there's a breach, right? Like in any of the transfer of assets, and a hacker gets the patient records, and that could be a whole another legal issue. But I guess how do you protect patient records during that transition?
I mean, well, obviously we have HIPAA is the biggest overarching federal law. Um, so you're required to have certain, security measures in place. Like, so let's start with the seller. The seller needs to obviously has to protect their privacy. So don't just give out records to anybody who calls. You need an authorization from the patient first, or it has to be medically necessary. Like you don't need an authorization to share it with, another dentist who you're referring them to, for obvious reasons. That would just, delay treatment, but don't give it to the guy on the street. Don't leave it laying around for anybody to just read. I
Yeah.
mean, nowadays with computers, you have to have, multi-factor authentications. You
Yeah.
have to, your computer, you can't just leave it on when you're away from your desk. You have to like, at least put the sleep screen on, something like that. They have all these, I mean, HIPAA has 1,000 of these protocols that you can use. You have to constantly, monitor your systems for any kind of holes that you're missing.
Right.
Nowadays, you could just hire an IT company that just specializes in this kind of
Yeah.
work. They know, so
Yeah.
they'll take care of it for you, but that's at least that part is on you. Like make sure that is taken care of. Now, as far as transitioning into the purchaser, normally in a normal sale, the purchaser's just stepping into your shoes. So they're just going to take over those same protocols, which is
Yeah.
fine. However, let's say you're selling just the records and the purchaser's taking them from your office into their own office. Now you have like a physical transition, so obviously the purchaser has to already have those in place. And then as far as transferring, if it's paper records, I mean, it's not rocket science. It's like package them in a box if you're taking the
Yeah.
paper records, make sure you're going directly from one spot to the other and put them away with the rest of your records. And as far as electronic records, I mean, there's encryption, you
Yeah.
know, encrypted whether it's in a massive hard drive or like don't send it by email, basically.
Yeah.
Like, don't send the records by email.
Right. Right. No, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, because I think that's so important. With any transition, right? Like the patients are everything.
Hmm.
And so if you're not protecting them, as soon as you open up the doors, I mean, you could lose a lot of patients, right? Or not have many, or I guess the bigger issue is you might not have a practice, like if that happens. So,
Yeah, of course.
um, I think the patients are everything. And then I think like because this is a marketing podcast and you're giving great advice, legal advice. So like when it comes to marketing assets, and the reason why I'm asking this question is because when there is a transition and we're talking to a dentist who he's got approved, everything is good, he's ready to buy, transition to his practice. What we find, I would say it's about 50% of the time, right? Half of them get the marketing assets, meaning there's some kind of legal agreement. Hey, that doctor's going to transfer Google My Business profile, website login, all that good stuff. And then there's other half of it where they don't know if they're
Mm.
getting those online assets. And so I guess my question for you is, how are you a part of that legal process to make sure that doctor who is selling his practice gives over the web online assets to this doctor who's buying the practice so that he can transition smoothly and do online marketing for the practice he's buying.
Absolutely. So that's part of the goodwill. So it's definitely included. And we actually do, at least on every contract I've written or that I've worked on, it's spelled out that you're getting the Google Business, you're getting the ZocDoc, you're getting any social media, you're getting the website, and any likes and reviews that are associated with those accounts. That's all has to be transferred over. And then the actual part of transferring over, I do oversee that. So because
Mm.
clients are like, how do I do this? It's like, I mean, then I have to get on Google or make some calls to find out. I don't work there. I don't know. Everybody has their own
Yeah. Yeah.
protocol, but so and then sometimes you hit a snag where it's like, oh, but this, like I need this, like we don't have that. It's like, well, you have to find it. And so I'm definitely, it's not exactly a legal thing, but that's me being like that kind of that guide through the process to make sure, everything gets done smoothly. Otherwise, I feel like I haven't done my job if there's
Yeah.
questions out there and I leave you hanging. So, but yeah, definitely they get every aspect of marketing. The thing is, a lot of dentists don't have marketing. Like, they're all referral or word of mouth or, maybe they have like some magazine articles if they're old
Yep.
school. But
Yep.
yeah, if they exist, they're in the contract. Just because it's in the contract doesn't mean it's there. It's just this is a just in case thing. It's like if to the extent you have these, I want them, and
Yeah.
we'll transfer them over.
Yeah, and no, that's exactly I think will be helpful to this audience. And I think too, what we've seen is right, like a doctor who is for whatever reason, they're not giving that brand to the new doctor. And
Mm,
maybe it's because that doctor has it's branded in his name as an example. And so this other doctor is rebranding, creating another name for the practice. So sometimes there's not a transfer of, hey, this is my name, you can't take it type situation. But what the doctor will do is they will allow like a redirect to happen, meaning the new doctor creates a website under, let's say, just making up a name, Friendly Dental Jersey,
mm,
right? And the doctor who's selling the practice, that practice is Dr. Johnson, DDS.
mm,
So what we'll see is they will allow a redirect. So it's called a 301 redirect, meaning once this new site is created, Friendly Dental New Jersey, the Dr. Johnson DDS website will redirect to this new Friendly New Jersey site. So what that
mm,
means is it's passing authority for a certain period. So like typically 30 to 60 days, 90 days, whatever they agree on. But essentially it tells Google, hey, this old site is becoming this new site. And so like it'll pass the juice and authority from Google's perspective and point of view to this new site so that Google can start ranking this new site for whatever keywords they're trying to rank for. And then
right,
once kind of that authority is passed, the other doctor will shut down his Dr. Johnson, DDS website. And then we can start helping Google understand like this name is null and void, where don't look at this site anymore. All the authorities pass to Friendly New Jersey site. And so we try to just help them as they're dealing with that legally, but then also on the marketing side with the redirect to pass the authority so that the doctor who's buying the practice can start off on the right foot when it comes
yeah.
from a marketing standpoint.
See that I didn't know that about that, but that's perfect because on my end, even before we get to that, it would be so in all of my deals, I always give the purchaser at least 1 year after closing to use the seller's name. So they can keep everything as
Mhm.
is. You keep his name on the signs, on the telephone directory, on stationery, whatever. That's part
Yep.
of transferring the goodwill. So it's a gradual thing as opposed to, okay, as of closing, that's it, he's gone.
Yep.
So during that year, if you guys come into play and do the back end stuff with the website, that would actually, I think that would make things a lot more smoother.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Eric, this has been great, man. I mean, you've talked about patient records, marketing, what clauses to scrutinize, and then just, legal concerns that from a buying and selling standpoint with that transition. I mean, I don't think we've had anyone to really talk about it at this level on our podcast, but I would love for you to kind of end with, if someone wants to contact you, where you can service dentists in terms of from a legal standpoint, and just how you can be reached and how you can be connected with.
Absolutely. So I cover New York and New Jersey. I can be reached. I have a website. It's andrewlaw.com, ANDRIEUXLAW.com. My last name is French, so people mess it up a lot, so I had to spell it out. But and I mean, just you Google me, I'll come up. The website, my LinkedIn, definitely, I'm all over LinkedIn. And or reach out to Lamar. He'll send you my way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll include all of that in the show notes. So are you French?
I'm Haitian.
Oh, I did not know that. I learned something new every day, man.
There it
Um,
is.
but yeah, I'll include everything in the show notes. And Eric, we appreciate your time. This was so valuable. Again, I'm Lamar with the Healthcare Digital Marketing Podcast. This is Eric with Andrieux Law, and we'll see you guys next time.
Good night, all.